All right, let's dive in. This time we're tackling lasers.
Oh, cool.
From laser pointers to, the stuff that's changing, like the world as we know it. We've got textbook chapters, uh, diagrams, even some juicy laser
So it
history.
sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
Get ready for some serious knowledge beams, folks.
It's amazing, isn't it, how something that started as just like a theory is now such a huge part of our lives.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
Laser light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. But what does that even mean? Like, have you ever used a laser pointer?
Of course. Who hasn't?
You're basically harnessing this concentrated light.
Right.
Right, and it all boils down to this thing called stimulated emission.
Stimulated emission. And the foundation for that whole concept, that was actually way back in 1917 by Albert Einstein.
No way. So Einstein wasn't just all about relativity.
Nope, not at all. His theories about how light interacts with atoms, how it can actually create even more light, that was like the seed for lasers as we know them today.
So how did we go from, like, Einstein's theories back then to, the lasers we have in our CD players, for example?
Well, it was a gradual process, really. Science is like a building. You build it brick by brick.
Right.
So in 1928, a scientist named Ladenburg, he found the first indirect evidence of stimulated emission.
Okay.
Then, in 1940, Fabricant, he suggested it could actually be used to amplify light.
So we're starting to see the laser take shape here. Who picks up the baton next?
Well, that would be Charles Townes in 1951. He proposed that this amplified light, it could actually be made to oscillate, like bounce back and forth
Yeah.
within a special cavity, which would create a coherent output.
So that sounds like we're getting really close to a real working laser now.
Exactly. And then, boom, 1960, Theodore Maiman, he builds the very first working laser, the ruby laser.
Wow.
Talk about science fiction becoming reality.
That must have been incredible.
Oh, it was. And you know what? That same year, the helium neon laser, or HENI laser, was invented too.
Wow, so 2 major laser types in 1 year. That's insane.
It felt like laser technology just exploded onto the scene.
It really did. But, okay, let's back up a bit. How did these things actually work, at the atomic level?
You want the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, give it to me.
All right, so it all comes down to that stimulated emission we were talking about and how it's different from spontaneous emission, which is, much more common. So imagine an atom, right? But it's in an excited state, full of energy.
Okay, got it.
In spontaneous emission, that atom just randomly releases a photon, a little packet of light. But with stimulated emission, if a photon with the right energy comes along, it's like it nudges the excited atom, causing it to release an identical photon.
Ah, so it's like a chain reaction of photons, all perfectly matched?
Exactly. That's how you get that concentrated, coherent beam that makes lasers so unique.
That makes sense. But then, okay, if all it takes is an excited atom and a photon, why aren't we seeing lasers, like, everywhere? Shouldn't everything be, like, spontaneously lasing all the time?
That's a great question. And that's where population inversion comes in. You see, to get a laser, you need more atoms in that excited state ready to release those photons than in the lower energy state.
Oh, I see.
At normal temperatures, spontaneous emission kind of wins out. It's like herding cats. Those photons are just going all over the place.
So you need some tricks to tip the scales, to get more of those atoms excited and ready to lace.
Exactly. And that process, we call that pumping. It's like giving those atoms a jolt of energy, getting them ready for action. There are different ways to do it, using light, electrons, even collisions between atoms.
To create that population inversion.
Right.
Okay, so we've got our pumped up atoms ready to release that laser light. What else do we need to actually build a working laser?
Okay, well, think of it like assembling a high-tech puzzle, right?
Okay.
You need 3 key pieces. First, you have the amplifying medium. That's where all the action happens. It's the collection of atoms that will actually amplify the light through stimulated emission, the heart of the laser, if you will.
So that's where pumped up atoms are hanging out, ready to go.
Exactly. Then you need an optical resonator. Usually this is 2 mirrors facing each other, and they create this feedback loop as the light bounces back and forth between them. And each time it passes, it gets amplified.
Ah, so it's like an echo chamber for light, but instead of getting quieter, the light gets stronger.
Perfect analogy. And lastly, we need the pump source. That's what provides the energy to excite the atoms in the first place.
Right, got to keep those atoms energized and ready to lace. Okay, so we have our amplifying medium, resonator, and pump source, the laser dream team. But we know there are all kinds of lasers out there, each with their own, like, quirks and strengths.
Oh, absolutely.
earlier you mentioned the ruby laser and the Heaney laser.
Right.
Why were those two so important?
Well, they were both pioneers, each using a different approach to achieve the same goal, which is that concentrated beam of laser light. And they really paved the way for the incredible variety of lasers we have today.
So let's start with the ruby laser. That was the very first working laser, right? What made it so special?
The ruby laser used a synthetic ruby crystal as its amplifying medium. Now, rubies, they're actually crystals of aluminum oxide,
Okay.
or sapphire, but doped with a little bit of chromium. And those chromium ions, they're the key players here. They absorb light from the pump source and reach that excited state we talked about earlier.
So the chromium is what gives the ruby its, characteristic red color.
Yeah.
And also what makes it possible to make a laser.
You got it. In Maimann's ruby laser, the pump source was a high-powered flash lamp.
Huh.
Basically, it bathed the ruby rod in this really intense light,
Yep.
and that excited those chromium ions.
So we've got our excited chromium ions. What happens next?
Well, those excited ions, they can't stay at that high energy level forever, right?
Right.
They quickly decay to a slightly lower energy level, what we call a metastable state. Don't worry, it's not as unstable as it sounds.
Hastable. So like a temporary energy pit stop before they release that laser light.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
those ions, they tend to hang out in that metastable state a bit longer,
Okay.
which is key for building up that population inversion. So with enough pumping from the flash lamp, you end up with more chromium ions in that metastable state than in the ground state.
So we've achieved population inversion in our ruby crystal. Are we ready to lace?
Almost. Now we need those excited chromium ions to release their energy as light. That's where stimulated emission comes back in. A photon with the right energy comes along,
Right.
interacts with an excited chromium ion, and boom!
Boom.
Two identical photons are released, and both of those have a wavelength of around 694.3 nanometers, that deep red color that's characteristic of ruby lasers.
And then those photons get trapped between the mirrors in the resonator, bouncing back and forth, creating that chain reaction of stimulated emission.
Exactly, and with each pass between those mirrors, the light gets amplified, building up until...
Powerful beam of red light.
Right, and eventually some of that light escapes through one of the mirrors, and that, my friend, is our laser beam.
So that's the ruby laser, from a flash of light to a beam of concentrated red. Okay, what about the Heaney laser? How does that one work?
Ah, the Heaney laser. Well, it was developed just a few months after the ruby laser, and it uses a totally different approach. Instead of a solid crystal, it uses a mixture of helium and neon gas as the amplifying medium.
Helium and neon.
I know.
It's like balloons and neon signs.
Yeah.
Who knew you could make a laser out of that?
I know, right? It seems a little strange, but those gases, when you subject them to an electrical discharge, they create the perfect conditions for lasing.
Okay, so how does this gas mixture actually generate a laser beam?
So first, you create an electrical discharge through the gas mixture that acts as our pump source,
All right.
exciting the helium atoms to a higher energy level.
So it's kind of like giving those helium atoms a jolt of energy, just like we talked about with pumping before.
Precisely. Now here's where it gets interesting. Those excited helium atoms, they collide with neon atoms and they transfer their energy.
It's like a microscopic game of atomic billiards with energy bouncing between atoms.
I love that analogy. And that transfer of energy, it bumps the neon atoms up to a specific excited state. That's the state that's key for lasing.
So the helium atoms are like little energy couriers, delivering that energy to the neon atoms.
You got it. And then those excited neon atoms, they decay to a lower energy level, releasing photons of light in the process.
Yeah.
And because we've achieved population inversion, thanks to those helpful helium atoms,
We get stimulated emission and ultimately our laser beam.
you got it.
So what color is the Heaney laser beam?
The most common ones emit red light at a wavelength of 632.8 nanometers.
Okay, so we have our red ruby laser and our red Heaney laser, both taking very different paths to get to that, powerful concentrated beam of light. It's really amazing how much we can achieve with both a solid crystal and a mixture of gases.
It really is. And that's just the beginning of the laser story, the sheer variety of lasers out there and all the incredible things we can do with them. It's remarkable.
Welcome back to our laser journey. We've gone deep into how lasers work, at the atomic level, and met some of the early stars, like the ruby and Heaney lasers. But I gotta ask, the laser family is huge, right?
Oh, it's massive. Just like with those early lasers, each type has its own, strengths and quirks.
Makes it perfect for certain jobs, you mean?
Exactly.
Okay, hit me with a laser showcase. What other cool laser types are out there?
Well, let's start with a real workhorse, the semiconductor laser. You probably run into these every day without even knowing it.
Semiconductor lasers? Aren't those the ones in, like, everything? DVD players, those little red laser pointer?
You got it. They're everywhere, and for good reason. Super versatile.
So what's their secret? What makes them so special?
It all starts with the material semiconductors. Think silicon, gallium arsenide, they have these unique electrical properties. They're not quite conductors like copper, but not insulators like rubber.
The in-betweeners of the material world.
Ah, yeah, great way to put it. And that in-betweenness, that's what makes them perfect for lasers.
Okay, so we've got our semiconductor. How do we get it to, like, make a laser beam?
The key is a p-n junction. That's where two different types of doped semiconductor material meet up.
Doped. Like, we add impurities. Why mess with a good thing?
Ah, but that's the trick. By adding impurities, we can fine-tune the electrical properties. So one side of the junction, the p-type, it's got extra holes. Those act like positive charge carriers, like a region with a slight positive charge.
Okay, so the P-type side is all about the positive vibes. What about the other side?
That's the n-type side. It's got extra electrons, those negative guys, so you have a region with a slight negative charge.
So it's like a tiny electrical tug-of-war happening inside the semiconductor.
Exactly. And when you apply a voltage across that junction, you get a flow of current. Electrons from the n-type flow towards the p-type, and those positive holes go the other way.
A microscopic rush hour.
I love it. And when those electrons and holes meet up, we call that recombination. They release energy as light.
Wait, so just by applying a voltage, we get light?
Yep. And by carefully picking the right semiconductor and designing that p-n junction, we can get the conditions just right for, you guessed it, stimulated emission, laser time.
So the p-n junction is the amplifying medium itself.
You got it. And because semiconductors are so compact and efficient, we can make these tiny, low-power lasers, perfect for all those portable devices.
It's mind-blowing how something so small can create such a powerful beam of light. But I'm guessing there's even more to the semiconductor laser story.
Oh, yeah. Just like we have a whole periodic table of elements, there's this diverse family of semiconductor lasers, double heterostructure lasers, quantum well lasers. The list goes on.
Quantum wells. That sounds super high-tech.
They are. By engineering these super thin layers of material, we can fine-tune the laser's performance even more.
Semiconductor lasers truly are the multi-talented members of the laser family. But what about gas lasers? We met the Heaney laser, but I feel like that's just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah. Heaney is just one example. The world of gas lasers is huge. Different gas mixtures, different wavelengths, different applications.
Okay, I'm ready for more. What other kinds of gas lasers are out there making waves?
One of the most powerful and common is the carbon dioxide laser, or CO2 laser for short.
Carbon dioxide. Isn't that the stuff we breathe out?
The very same. That gas we exhale can also make some seriously powerful laser beams.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How do you go from CO2 to a laser?
It's kind of similar to the Hino laser. We use an electrical discharge to energize the gas molecules, but with CO2 lasers, nitrogen molecules in the mix play a crucial role too.
So nitrogen is like the hype man, getting the CO2 excited and ready to lace.
Huh. I like that. The nitrogen gets energized by the discharge and then transfers that energy over to the CO2 molecules. That's what helps create that population inversion we need.
So the CO2 molecules, they're in their excited state and they release their energy as light.
Exactly. And that light falls in the infrared region of the spectrum, wavelength of about 10.6 micrometers.
Infrared, so we wouldn't actually be able to see the CO2 laser beam.
Nope, invisible to our eyes. But that doesn't make it any less powerful.
I bet. What kinds of things do we use these invisible CO2 lasers for?
CO2 lasers are great for cutting, welding, engraving, even surgery. They're known for their high power and efficiency.
The heavy listers of the laser world.
That's a great way to put it, especially good for working with materials like wood, plastic, metal.
Okay, CO2 lasers. Powerful and invisible. Any other gas lasers we should meet? Maybe some we can actually see this time.
Of course. Another popular one is the argon ion laser.
Argon ion laser. Sounds a bit more exotic. What's so special about that one?
Well, this laser uses ionized argon gas as its amplifying medium, and instead of that invisible infrared, it emits this beautiful blue-green light.
So we could actually see this laser beam.
You bet.
I'm picturing laser light shows with these amazing blue-green beams. But besides looking cool, what are argon ion lasers used for?
Oh, all sorts of things. Laser printing, ophthalmology, scientific research, they get around.
They're not just a pretty beam, then. We've covered solid-state lasers with the Ruby, gas lasers with the Hine, CO2, argon ion, and then those versatile semiconductor lasers. Anything else out there that could surprise us?
Well, there's one more type I think deserves a spot on our laser tour, the dye laser.
Dye laser, like the stuff you use to color clothes.
You're on the right track. Dye lasers use organic dyes. They're dissolved in a liquid, and that becomes the amplifying medium.
So we're shining light on colored liquid to make a laser beam. That's pretty wild.
It is, and what makes them special is their tunability.
Tunability. Does that mean we can change the color of the laser?
You got it. By changing the dye or the solvent, we can adjust the wavelength of the laser light.
Whoa, it's like a laser with a color dial.
Yeah.
What do we use these color-changing lasers for?
They're really valuable in scientific and medical applications. Spectroscopy, for example, that helps us analyze what materials are made of.
Oh, good.
Also microscopy, even photodynamic therapy, which is used to treat certain diseases.
So dye lasers are helping us understand the world and even heal. It seems like there's a laser for almost every job. But I bet there's even more to learn, right?
Oh, always. In part 3, we'll shift gears a bit. From the lasers themselves to all the incredible ways they're being used to, change the world around us.
Welcome back, everyone. We've journeyed through the heart of lasers, met a whole bunch of different laser types. But now it's time to, step out of the lab and see how lasers are actually used in the real world.
Because lasers aren't just cool science, they're all around us, quietly powering so much of our modern lives, really.
Okay, I'm ready for a laser-powered day. Where do we even start?
Well, imagine this. You wake up, right?
Okay.
And maybe your alarm clock uses a teeny tiny semiconductor laser to, project the time onto your ceiling.
Lasers aren't alarm clocks.
They are. And then, you grab your smartphone to check messages, right?
Yeah.
That touchscreen you're swiping on often relies on lasers to detect your finger's position.
Wow, lasers are everywhere.
Even at breakfast. Yeah, you scan a barcode on your cereal box, you're using a laser to get that product information.
Oh yeah, barcode scanners. Those are classic laser tech.
Right.
But I've always wondered, how do they actually work?
It's all about light and reflection. So the scanner, it shines a laser beam onto the barcode. Those black bars and white spaces, they reflect the light differently, and a sensor reads that pattern.
Ah, so it's like a secret code written in light.
Exactly. And that code gets translated into the product info.
Pretty neat. Okay, so breakfast is done. Time for the commute. Are there any lasers helping me get to work?
Well, if you're driving, there could be lasers helping control your car's emissions. A lot of modern cars use laser-based sensors now to, monitor exhaust gases.
Really?
Helps the engine run cleaner.
Lasers fighting pollution.
And even if you're on public transport, trains and buses sometimes use laser sensors for safety and speed control.
Keeping us safe and on schedule. Okay, I've made it to the office. What laser magic awaits me there?
Well, if you use a laser printer, you're harnessing the precision of lasers to get those nice, crisp documents.
Laser printers, another classic. But how do they actually work? It's not like there's a tiny laser artist inside, drawing each letter.
No. It's a bit more complicated than that. The laser creates an electrostatic image on a drum, and that attracts toner particles. And those particles are then transferred to the paper and fused in place with heat.
A laser-powered team effort.
Right. And when work is done, it's time for some laser-powered entertainment. If you watch a movie on Blu-ray, you're experiencing those high-definition visuals, all thanks to blue lasers.
Blue lasers. Why blue, though?
Well, blue light has a shorter wavelength than red light, which means you can focus it to a smaller spot. That lets you pack more information onto a disc, gives you that crystal clear picture.
It's all about the wavelength. Blue lasers for the win. What about gaming? Any lasers lurking in my console?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of gaming consoles use lasers for things like motion tracking or gesture recognition. Makes the whole experience more immersive.
Lasers for work, lasers for play. Is there anything they can't do?
Good question.
What about in medicine? I know they're used for some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, lasers have revolutionized a lot of areas of medicine. Take ophthalmology, for instance. Lasers are used for vision correction procedures like LASIK surgery.
LASIK, that's the one where they reshape your cornea with a laser, right?
That's right. And lasers are also used to treat other eye conditions too, like glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy.
Wow, helping people see better. That's amazing. Any other mythical miracles lasers can pull off?
Well, in dermatology, lasers are used for things like hair removal, tattoo removal, treating various skin conditions. And of course, they're essential tools in a lot of types of surgery. Making precise incisions, cauterizing blood vessels, even removing tumors.
It's really mind-blowing how lasers are being used to heal and improve our lives.
It really is. And we've only just scratched the surface, honestly. One of the most transformative applications of lasers has to be fiber optic communication. You know those thin glass fibers that carry tons of data across the globe at lightning speed?
Oh, yeah, fiber
Sure.
optic cables, the backbone of the internet.
Exactly. And lasers are the light source. They generate pulses of light that travel through those fibers, carrying information as coded signals.
So it's like sending messages at the speed of light.
Pretty much. And because we can modulate those light pulses so quickly, we can send huge amounts of data with amazing accuracy.
It's like lasers have unlocked a whole new way for us to communicate.
It really is incredible.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. I'm going to look at everything differently now, knowing about this hidden world of lasers working all around us.
That's the beauty of it, right? Learning something new and seeing the world with fresh eyes, appreciating the science behind everyday things.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, stay curious, keep exploring. You never know what laser-powered wonders you'll discover next. Thanks for joining us on this laser-filled deep dive.